Well folks, let's have a little fun. Today, I'm so sorry for doing that, but I had to. I, like many white people all across America, had a mother who very much enjoyed Ellen DeGeneres and her eponymous daytime television talk show. I never really got the appeal, but I imagine a middle-aged woman dancing, interviewing celebrities, which at one point, included anyone who went viral on Twitter, and preaching a message of positivity, ending every show with the phrase, "Be kind to one another." I imagine how that could appeal to a lot of middle America. For a lot of people though, including myself, it's always been a bit of a bullshit facade, as rumors of Ellen being one of the most difficult people to work with in all of Hollywood have been swirling for many, many years. Eventually, those rumors became more than rumors, and in 2022, her talk show was taken off the air. And now, 2 years later, she's leaving on her own terms with what is honestly one of the strangest stand-up comedy specials I think I've ever seen. You could say it's a bad special, and I'd be inclined to agree with you, but it honestly fascinates me in its mediocrity more than anything else. It's both an incredibly tame special where Ellen spends 7 minutes talking about parallel parking and windshield wipers, but also represents the swan song of an entertainer who's had a multi-decade-long career and is now, with this special, making an attempt to change her image in the mind of public perception. Let's talk about Ellen DeGeneres for your approval, the truly intriguing mess that it is. But before we get started, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat, and if you like my videos and you like my content, please subscribe. Only 14% of you are subscribed. I make 1 to 2 new videos every week, and while you're at it, like and comment on this video. When you do that, it gets this video out to more people, which helps me greatly, and when I see numbers go up, my simple monkey brain tells me you're happy. That's dark. But yeah, couldn't do it without you guys. Heart, back by popular demand. Before we get into the truly thrilling analysis of Ellen's windshield wipers routine, let's get into the specifics as to why Ellen was actually removed from show business. Well, technically, as she puts it, it did happen twice. The first time for completely terrible reasons that aren't her fault at all. Ellen actually began her career as a stand-up comic and eventually got a sitcom of her own called Ellen, but in 1997 she came out publicly as a lesbian.
I'm a lesbian now.
Shortly thereafter, her sitcom was taken off the air and her career was effectively in the toilet. We as a society, we did fail Ellen. We failed a lot of gay people, which also includes Ellen, but eventually, a few years later, society decided, hey, gay people are kinda chill.
And I believe that in
2002,
God changed his mind about
gay.
people.
And in the wake of this, she launched what would be her ultimate career achievement, the immensely popular Ellen DeGeneres Show, a daytime talk show that aired from 2003 until it was taken off the air in 2022. And I hope I've been able to conceal it, but perhaps you can sense my long-buried adolescent frustration that I wanted to watch Impractical Jokers, but my mom said, no, we can't, Ellen is on. Not my thing. So why did Ellen's show get taken off the air? Well, as she puts it, it was because she was removed from show business for being mean.
Yeah, because I'm mean. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be mean and be in show business. No, they'll kick you out.
But the actual reality is a little bit more complicated than that. And when I say the word complicated, I'm using it the same way liberals use it to describe the Middle East. Well, it's complicated. Because it's actually not that complicated, and it's pretty fucking horrific. As even Ellen points out in her truly incredible opening sequence, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. It all began with a viral tweet asking for others to share their negative experiences with Ellen. And by the way, it's probably pretty bad for your reputation as an overly positive celebrity if there's a viral Twitter thread asking everybody to talk about all the times you were an asshole. If I see a thread go viral where somebody asks everyone to talk about the times Elmo was problematic, I'm gonna have a lot of questions. And you know what? I'm gonna maybe start thinking, Larry David, you might have been justified for attacking him.
Oh my gosh!
These claims varied, with one person saying they were instructed by upper management not to look Ellen in the eye or ever say hi to her.
Look down, don't look him in the eye.
And it's very funny when celebrities want to literally be treated like they are Medusa in Greek myth. I don't really know too much about her, snakes for, hair, whatever. I was a Hunger Games kid, not a Percy Jackson kid. Apologies in advance and retrospectively. Another claimed it was an open secret that every day she would just pick one new person to hate, which, I mean, this was all just very funny considering she would tell everybody, be kind to one another, except for you, Gary. Today you are on my list.
I really, the rest of my time here, I really just want to have fun with you guys. Except for you, don't talk to me.
And one person even said she got a waitress fired because that waitress had a chipped nail. which is crazy to me, as that waitress points out in her stand-up set about it, which I will link in the description.
Until I was released after a really popular talk show host emailed the owner and complained about my chipped nail polish.
The level of pure spite you have to have as a very rich and very busy person to send an email to a restaurant to get someone fired, like, that's generational levels of hating. Like, Ellen is putting up generational numbers in the hater category. She also started saying some really out-of-pocket things during COVID, including comparing the lockdown to being in jail, although since she was being locked down in her multi-million-dollar mansion, she must have meant the jail cell that Al Capone had the first time. Second time he went to Alcatraz and things did not go well for him. He ended up shining some kid's shoes. And mind you, she had said that basically right after she had ghosted her production staff for a month after they, in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, had the audacity to ask such silly questions like, do I still have a job? Meanwhile, Ellen was hiring a non-union production company to produce the show from her home. But when she really hit the fan was in June of 2020, when BuzzFeed News compiled a report of 11 current and former staff members alleging some pretty rough things. By the way, I can't imagine the utter indignity of saving your career from society's homophobia only to have it killed by BuzzFeed News, of all places. I joke, of course, but BuzzFeed News actually was doing a lot of really good news coverage until they shut down in 2023. I guess it's hard to be taken seriously as a source of hard news when you're also linked to a website that does insane quizzes, like this one. Which ousted Arab Spring ruler are you? And I'll link it in the description if you want to take it yourself. But for, not for nothing, but I got Mubarak. Ellen, throughout this entire special, is going to position herself as a victim, and nowhere is this more evident than with this overly produced, insane intro sequence, which I'll put a little bit of here.
Breaking news tonight. Is the Queen of Nice really the Queen of Mean?
Toxic work environment, toxic, phony, hypocrite, liar.
Things are really spiraling. Ellen DeGeneres.
And just to remind you, this is supposed to be a stand-up comedy special. This is a truly bizarre way to start. Specials, designed to make us laugh, and honestly though, this intro does make me laugh just because of the sheer levels of self-victimization and a complete and total avoidance of blame that's on display here. You can't help but laugh. Because even as Ellen wants to simplify things, the report alleges a lot more than just her being mean. In toxic work environment, I don't even think really does it justice. Employees say they were fired for taking medical leave or time off to go to funerals. A black former employee said she experienced racist comments, actions, and microaggressions, as well as similarly qualified white employees making double the salary of non-white employees. And it got so bad that her former manager reached out during Black Lives Matter to apologize. And I don't even know how racist you have to be to see Black Lives Matter happening and being like, I can think of at least 4 to 6 black people in my personal life I should probably send an apology email to. That's just insane. Another employee had to take a month of medical leave after a suicide attempt, and when they got back to work, they found out that their position had been eliminated, which is a little bit like if George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life wished he had never been born, sees that reality, sees that his bank has been replaced by an Arby's, and that everybody is a lot happier because they have the meats. The work environment was even compared to Jonestown, saying that there were 2 groups of employees, one group which recognized the fact that the conditions were toxic, and another group that drank the Kool-Aid and accepted things for the way they were. And by the way, I'm just going to take a quick second to defend Kool-Aid and their reputation because they have been defamed needlessly for no reason. Drinking the Kool-Aid comes from Jonestown. Jonestown was a failed cult project that ended in a giant murder-suicide. 900 people died, including a congressman. It was insane. And how they died was they were forced at gunpoint to drink, apparently, Kool-Aid with cyanide in it. But that is not the truth. It was not Kool-Aid. It was actually a different product named Flavor Aid. It was not the name brand Kool-Aid. I am sick and goddamn tired of Kool-Aid Man and his livelihood being needlessly attacked. It was not Kool-Aid. We should change the phrase to drinking the Flavor Aid. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. To wrap things up, I think one staffer put it best with this quote: "That be kind bullshit only happens when the cameras are on. It's all for show." And in fairness to Ellen, she didn't do all those things personally, she just hired and was friends with the people who did as they were running the show named after her, as well as she wants to be treated like a Greek goddess, as well as she has also been on the record as berating people and berating writers, and ultimately, is the person responsible for the workplace that was created in the show, ultimately becoming one of the most toxic places to work in all of Los Angeles.
I can see where that would be misinterpreted.
All that being said, it was important to talk about all that because I really do think interpreting this special, you need to know the context of Ellen and why the Ellen DeGeneres Show was taken off the air, because so much of what she is saying in this special relies on that, and frankly, from her perspective, it relies on kind of a very generous interpretation of history. An unearned victim complex permeates this entire special, so it's good to just dispel that myth right away.
Hey, Patrick,
You might be saying in the comments,
you haven't even talked about the movie. You've just been doing a hit job on Matt Walsh.
actually, sorry, those are the comments for a different video that I did. And forgive me for trying to actually inform you, the viewer, the people watching these videos, and actually give you the context to properly understand and really get a better frame of reference as we're talking about and reviewing this media. To do a truly good review, in my opinion, I think Madam Vice President Kamala Harris put it best.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
I like that Kamala, man. That was fun. Wine Aunt Kamala. Now she has to be Mamala.
We need you to be Mamala of the country.
Now, I've used that clip before, and I will keep using it whenever it's relevant. It hurts me. Anyway, let's take a look at Ellen's entrance when she comes on stage for the first time, and you're probably going to hear something very distinctive. This crowd is loud, and I cut out, obviously, the majority of it, but there was like a 45-second standing ovation just for entering, which, okay, there's a lot of enthusiasm there, sure, but that enthusiasm is gonna keep coming up throughout the entire special. This user on Twitter claims to have worked at that theater and says this was one of the loudest crowds he had ever experienced. It's way louder than Joe Rogan, and I thought that was a crowd that was really buying hook, line, and sinker to a lot of bad jokes. But in the midst of this raucous applause, what does Ellen say in response to that?
Thank you so much. It seems like you still care.
Jesus Christ, that's sad. That's actually going to be a bit of a running theme throughout the entire special. You wouldn't know it from watching this, but Ellen's past comedy was actually generally pretty positive and energetic, but that is not at all the vibe that Ellen is bringing into this special. In this special, I would describe her delivery as reminding me of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It sounds like you still care. Beneath the surface, that is one of the saddest lines I've ever heard in a stand-up comedy special. It's a line that's so sad, it really feels like Tigger should be popping up in there and being like, "Oh, Ellen, why am I Mickey Mouse? It ain't all bad. Cheer up." It's fine to have a subtle delivery if that's your stand-up style, and Ellen is obviously welcome to change throughout her career. I'm not gonna be the, you're not like you were 40 years ago, police. But there really aren't a lot of moments in this special where you see Ellen have any genuine enthusiasm for the material she's delivering, especially the material that isn't related to her removal from show business. And you'll see what I mean as soon as we get to her lengthy bit about windshield wipers, parallel parking, and lumbar support. Her heart is just not in it. But before we get there, she has a couple jokes about how she doesn't really care what people think, although yes, she does, she did, and she still does. And the audience, eating all this up, by the way, they eat up almost every single joke in this special, so when they're not clapping, then it really sounds quiet. The audience honestly reminds me of when I did a stand-up comedy set in high school for a charity. Like, the charity was literally like, a bunch of kids will get up and perform. And I was absolutely destroying with my material, even though it was terrible. Like, jokes about how the Buffalo Bills are average and how Tom Cruise is short. But I was killing because those parents were just grateful I wasn't like the 7th kid coming up there with a violin. They were like, finally, something different. As I've mentioned by now a couple times, she spends like about 8 minutes doing these bits about parallel parking and windshield wipers, and none of it is really that good.
And then you're trying to fiddle with it, trying to turn it off, and you don't know how to turn it off because it's always different. Sometimes it's on the end of the lever on the steering wheel. Sometimes there's a lever within the lever.
Her main point is that they're just too darn complicated, and just like there's enough lines there, you can maybe make a couple good one-off jokes and then pivot to more interesting material, but she'll continually just expand on these jokes that aren't funny. Like, parallel parking is tough when people are watching you. Okay, then she proceeds to just expand on it, and it just doesn't work. And I don't even know if there's a way to do a funny, lengthy joke about parallel parking, because for 80% of Americans, it's just something that they'll do once and fail at their driver's test and then never do again, or, you know, in my case, 4 times. Hey, get that out of here. You know, I actually used to work as a valet. # beat the stereotypes. To best show what I mean, I think that this joke about lumbar support really personifies this entire section of the special.
Gotta support your lumbar. Got to. That's all any of us knows about the lumbar.
It was moments like these that really made those 70 minutes fly by. Naturally, though, the audience is very interested in what her life has been like ever since she was off the air. Well, how do I know that? They tell you with their raucous applause.
All right, well, let me catch up on what's been going on with me since you saw me last.
The extent of this is really just Ellen talking about her chickens, and I say talking because half of it really is just her describing her chickens. The other half are a couple jokes. And more interestingly, she's also complaining about how she was kicked out of show business. And I had the same criticism about the Joe Rogan special. It's a little rich to be making jokes about how you were kicked out of show business during your Netflix special.
No mean people in show business. I'm out.
And as I've mentioned, Ellen, it was a little bit more than just being mean. I will say, though, it does set up for a pretty funny joke when she's talking about a conversation she had with her therapist. Her therapist asks her, hey, you know, why do you think everyone dislikes you? Leaving Ellen to say this.
And I said, well, New York Times, Washington Post, Entertainment Weekly, Us Weekly. I think Elmo may have said something recently on an episode of Sesame Street.
I can totally buy, though, that Elmo has beef with a couple different various celebrities, because that would really be the only plausible explanation for this.
Oh my gosh!
And now that I've brought it up 2 times, I just want to say the only thing possibly even funnier than Elmo being beaten up by Larry David was Will Wheaton's complaint about it. Will Wheaton of Star Trek fame called the act appalling, unforgivable, and despicable, which to me, in my opinion, suggests maybe you might be getting a little bit too upset over a man fighting a puppet, but that's just me. And while Ellen may be at sending emails to get service employees fired levels of haterdom, I really am not. As I've pointed out, Ellen has had quite a few quips and jokes that actually I find funny. My issue is, though, is that as soon as I'm starting to enjoy it, she will double down on exactly why this special exists. She will double down on a 15. If 15 is not a great hand in blackjack, you kind of have to hope the dealer busts, but she will double and then triple down. She will make up new terms in the game of blackjack. This is what I mean. Because she keeps going back to her cancellation, her removal from show business, and she does it in such a way that suggests a complete lack of self-awareness. She expands further, saying she really didn't ever feel prepared to be a boss, let alone the boss of her own show, making a joking comparison that, hey, is Ronald McDonald the CEO of McDonald's just because his face is everywhere? Well, first of all, no, it's not. I feel like McDonald's as a brand has been rapidly moving away from Ronald McDonald and the gang, but that's beside the point. As much as I would like to see a return of Uncle O'Grimacy, Irish war criminal. A better comparison would be the actual namesake of McDonald's, the McDonald brothers. They were the ones who opened up the first restaurant, and if you had wanted to get them fired back then, they wouldn't have been wearing nail polish, so you would have had to come up with a better way to do it, Ellen. Maybe steal their business idea, open up a lot of franchises, gradually corner the market. Actually, that's what happened in real life. She then goes on to say women are too afraid to play an air guitar because they lack the confidence and aren't raised that way. She mentions she was raised in the Christian Science religion, and, you know, no offense to them, but I doubt they are going to be trying to create strong and empowered women. Kind of makes sense that Ellen had that negative experience. She then goes on to say that men and women face different obstacles, particularly in management, which is just categorically true. The problem is, though, is she's using this to equivocate. She's using this to deflect from what happened when she was the boss. And just reading the descriptions from the BuzzFeed report, if even half of that was true, I can't possibly imagine being the person ultimately responsible for it, reading what happened, reading the suffering and the toxicity that was created under my name. I can't imagine being this dismissive about it, and now years later saying I was completely in the right. It wasn't my fault. You bear some culpability for the environment that existed in your show. Your face was on the billboard and your employees were fired for going to funerals. Like, do you not realize that you may have done something wrong? No, you don't, because you've made an entire special to complain about how the process was unfair to you. She mentions she's never gone to college or gone to business school. She never wanted to be a leader. But this isn't a question of never having gone to business school. This is a question of never having gone to medical school, because you can't locate and see if you've got a spine. A lot of her problems, at least going off of what's presented to us in the special, may have been a result of Ellen's complete and total unwavering honesty, including to the point where she even told this to a friend.
But as soon as you tell someone that all of their stories should be 50% shorter, you lose 100% of their friendship, is what happens.
There's a big mid-joke applause I had to cut out there, by the way. It wasn't even close to the punchline, but they were going crazy anyway. And frankly, I don't even think this is like, oh, you know, she's joking. I'm sure she's better in her personal life. I don't really believe that for 1 second. And not for nothing, but I can't imagine the people in this crowd, the people who are going to see the live taping of the Ellen DeGeneres For Your Approval Netflix show. I cannot possibly imagine they're the type of people to tell brief and concise and engaging stories. They're the type of people to suddenly whip out a 10-minute story about how their son is doing in youth soccer. Oh, well, no, Johnny's doing great. But then there's Timmy. Timmy's mom is Stacy, and Stacy is a bitch. Like, Stacy, she was bringing in apple juice when I was signed up to bring orange slices. I had orange slices on the sheet. Stacy never uses the sheet. She is terrible, and doesn't she know that apple juice is all sugar? Apple juice is all sugar. All the best parts of the apple have been taken out. And by the way, I saw her talking with her husband. It looked tense. That marriage is on the rocks. But in a somewhat ironic turn, after just complaining about how people take too long to tell their stories, Ellen does another almost 10 minutes about butterflies and pigeons. That is where we go next on this thrilling roller coaster of a comedy special. If you didn't know Ellen loved animals before the special, you'll definitely know after. It's just like, it's fine. It's not even fine. It's bad. There are a couple parts of it that are fine. It just really drags along, and it's not tightly written. It's not great. Like, the most interesting thing is when she talks about how she tried to rescue a one-legged pigeon, but fed it garbage and then it died. Lot to unpack there, but I'll defer it to Ellen's aforementioned therapist that we talked about earlier. I sometimes hear that everybody should be in therapy, and I don't personally know if I believe that, but then I see the stand-up specials of these people who are just fabulously wealthy, and I'm like, if you cannot be well-adjusted in a multi-million-dollar mansion, what hope is there for the rest of us? She did some stuff that I liked, I'm gonna be honest. Like when she said she was 66 and then got a big applause, she makes a joke that's pretty funny.
Thank you. That's how you know you're old. You get the applause. You don't get it when you're 30 or even in your 50s.
And then she also does a pretty incredibly overused bit about, like, complaining about doctors and how they're, you know, asking you how much you've had to drink in, like, a week. And it's like, oh, it's none of your business. Like, it's very trite. It's very overdone. You've heard it a million times. But for me, I liked it. You know, it reminds me of the jokes I heard growing up from my extended family. Oop. And then there's a lot of humor just about aging and being old as we get to the end of the special, which is kind of ironic. It really kind of takes away any of the energy that had been built up because you're just now complaining about how your bones are brittle. And, you know, it also drags. Like, it's not stand-up comedy coming from a world-class comedian when you're complaining about the restaurants and how they're too dark and how the text on the menus isn't big enough.
And I don't feel old. I really don't. The only time I feel old is when I'm in a restaurant and I'm trying to read a menu.
Like, this is the type of insight I would get from my grandmother, and God love her, but she is not going to be selling out an arena anytime soon. And this is all ironic because all this material about aging is really dragging on, and usually when you get to the end of your life starts going a lot faster. But maybe the secret to feeling like your life is longer is during your golden years listening to bad stand-up comedy. Then you'll feel like you've accidentally discovered the secret to eternal life. The last thing I want to talk about is the clip that went most viral from the special, which is actually almost at the very end.
But I'm tough, and I'm impatient, and I'm demanding, I'm direct. I'm a strong woman.
So it's that joke, followed by, and I'm not exaggerating, 1 minute of a standing ovation. And this isn't even the end of the special. 1 minute! of just people clapping. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that clip on social media, it's a little bit selectively edited. Like, it is a part of a larger joke, if you can call it that. I'll put the whole thing like on the screen if you want to read it. You don't have to, you're not missing much, but it's basically just an America Ferrara in Barbie-esque monologue rather than like her attempting to tell a joke. Like, it's clearly not being told for laughs. That being said, I do think the criticisms of that original tweet are still somewhat valid, because the part that was in that tweet video was separated by a butt. Moreover, it really wasn't a joke, which was the primary complaint of that tweet. And I don't personally have an issue with that in theory, because certainly during more personal specials, maybe you are going to have some moments that are more serious. But personally, in this special, it doesn't really sit right with me. It's absolutely insane to basically go on a personal rant about how you still feel like you're a good person even after everything that's happened, and then just indulge the audience or have them indulge you with a minute of a standing ovation before you're technically even done with your special. But anyway, shortly after that, Ellen ends her special with some more thunderous applause and brings her wife out there, completing what in her eyes was a successful swan song for a long storied career. And her takeaway message from this entire process: it's okay to care about what people think as long as you do it in moderation with respect to your health. And she's right about that. I do agree. So like this video and comment, or I'm going to start crying. I don't like this special. I think it's interesting. I think this was a fun script to write, and it's been a fun video to make, but it is a bad special. Half of it is material that, although some of it can be kind of funny, it's mostly just very trite, very overdone observations that even Ellen herself is barely engaged with. She doesn't really want to be doing this bit about how lumbar support is important, about how wearing sweatpants is fun. Like, her heart is just not in it, in half the material. Like, if you seriously find yourself making a joke in your televised Netflix special about how people don't show up to parties on time, stop, crumple up the whole paper. Oh, you might say that was just one joke. I'm guarantee you the other jokes you've written on that sheet of paper aren't any good either. Throw it away and restart. You need to leave your house, go touch grass, do something else. And that's something that I struggle with, but that's something that this special struggles with as well. If you're sitting all day in your mansion feeling bitter about how things went in your life, you are never going to get enough experiences to actually make good stand-up. You're just not. I mean, even at the age of 66, like, none of this was hearkening back to her past, other than the only parts of the material she actually was passionate about, which I'll get to in a second. And look, I can relate to you, Ellen, of not wanting to leave your mansion, except obviously I don't live in a mansion, I live in a cockroach-infested apartment, but our bitterness is the same. Life sucks. Go to a restaurant sometime, but this time, try not to get anybody fired. But as for the only material that Ellen actually is passionate about, it's material relating to how she feels like she was unjustly removed from show business. Instead of owning up to her actions, she continually dodges responsibility, passing the buck on to others while also simultaneously saying, really, nothing bad happened. She tries to distract from real allegations of a toxic workplace environment and racism in the workplace by saying, you know, in my office I had a little dispenser, I had a thing that would drop rubber snakes on people, and maybe that could have been misinterpreted. But in reality, after doing research for this video and reading that report, that bit isn't nearly as funny. Not that it was that funny to begin with, you kind of just seem like an asshole the entire time. She doesn't feel like she's done anything wrong and refuses to acknowledge the pain that was caused directly or indirectly by her actions, nor does she acknowledge the fact that she had been trafficking in essentially hypocrisy, building a brand off of being a super positive person while all of this was happening behind the scenes. To have a very public persona about being a super positive person while behind the scenes being terrible is a bold strategy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And in this special, it's maddening, as we watch a woman say that she's done nothing wrong when she clearly has, and an entire audience will agree and give her thunderous applause in acknowledgement of that bad opinion. Her attempts to tie the very real issues that women face in the workplace and in the world in general to her own mistakes is frankly very insulting to all the women out there who haven't run businesses that have trafficked in workplace misconduct and toxic environments and racism. And frankly, it's an insult to everybody out there who doesn't have beef with Elmo. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, please comment. It helps get this video out to more people, and I super duper duper appreciate it. That was a lot of dupers. But let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know. What do you think about Ellen? What about this special? I honestly, It was ghastly, if I could pick just one word. And if you like my content, consider subscribing. 1 to 2 new videos every single week. But before I leave you, I just want to acknowledge something. I'm currently dressed in my Oakland Athletics apparel. It's been a tough week for me as the Oakland Athletics have played their final home game in the Oakland Coliseum. It's really upsetting because this was was one of the teams that really got me into baseball, and to see their team completely destroyed, not just by greed, but by the greed of one individual, a man born into cartoonish wealth with absolutely no honor, no commitment to this town that had believed in his team for decades. It's frustrating. I wish my YouTube videos did have the ability to change the tides of corporate greed, but unfortunately I don't think that's the case. At any event, let's go Oakland. Fuck you, John Fisher. And my heart goes out to the people in Oakland, and especially the concessions workers and the stadium workers who are now going to be out of a job, and at the moment are not even getting severance pay. So this is a cheap, classless organization that has ruined one of the great baseball cities in America, and I hope they get an expansion team. But as always, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat, and I will see you for the next one.